We discussed a little bit. So a truth about whey. You know what whey is? Whey.
From milk?
It's a milk product.
Oh, from milk products.
You've heard the expression curds and whey?
So we're going to get a little bit into milk products, which is a very interesting discussion. We've all heard about the discussion of Chalav Yisrael and all that, but in order to start any milk discussion, we have to have a little background in what Chalav and Gavina Sakum and all these things are. And then we can take it from there. So there's a siman in Shulchan Aruch on this. Siman is Kuf Tes Vav. And Kuf Tes Vav has 2 sifim in it. Has 3 sifim in it, actually. So the first sif discusses Cholav, and the second sif discusses Gvina. So maybe we just go through it briefly so we have an idea of what the shilos are, or what it is. So the first sif says like this: a chol of milk, shachol bo yavid chavim, that a guy milked. When a Jew doesn't see him, aser it's aser. Shemeira by cholav tamei, because maybe he mixed in some non-kosher milk from, let's say, milk comes from a different kind of animal that's not kosher. Now, there are a lot of clauses to this, so we'll just give a little background here. That we know that just like an animal is not kosher, so too anything that comes out of it isn't kosher, right? So milk that comes out of a chazir or whatever, or a gamal or a camel or anything like that, is not kosher because it's yotzeh min hatamei. It comes out of a not kosher animal. But milk that comes out of a kosher animal is kosher because it comes out of a kosher animal. Now, we mentioned last week about Eiv Mordechai, 2 weeks ago. I was here. We'll come back to it. Now,
milk that comes from a treif animal.
Milk that comes from a treif animal is also not kosher. That wasn't part of this discussion here, but it's a good point. If the milk comes out of an animal that's actually a cow, but it's treif, it's also not kosher, that milk. We are saimach that roiv behemoths are ksheris. Most animals are not considered treif. Therefore, when you have an animal that's a cow that's alive, so you don't know it's treif. You usually don't find it's treif till you shacht it and you check the lungs and you see it's treif. So therefore, we're saimach haroiv, and we assume that the animals are kosher, and therefore the milk that comes from the animals are kosher. The big tumult that happened back then was that they realized that they used to do, in order to stop the kosher animals from having a lot of gas, and sometimes they would die from it even. So they would poke a hole in the stomach and sew it up. There was a procedure they made. They took a needle and they poked a hole in the stomach, and based on that procedure, halacha, that may be considered a treifa. That caused a big tumult in the world that perhaps all the milk that we're drinking is coming out of a treifa animal. But that's another discussion. What we're discussing here is the milk coming out of a kosher animal, and the question is that it's perhaps they mixed in non-kosher milk. Now, anyone who was on a farm and knows what kosher milk looks like and not kosher milk looks like will know that the consistency and the look of a not kosher animal, the milk looks different than a kosher animal. So the place to say we're not choishish that you're actually getting in a bottle of milk. You open up the bottle of milk and you'll find pig's milk in there. Now we're not choishish for that. What we're choishish for is that that'll be mixed in because it's cheaper. Why it's cheaper, I don't know, but it was cheaper, perhaps easier to have not kosher animal milk. So we mix it into the milk, and that you wouldn't be able to tell that it's mixed in. You couldn't tell that it's not kosher milk mixed into the kosher milk. Now, even though it's mixed in, it's bottled b'raiv, there was a big question in the Paiskim if this is called min b'minai or min b'she'ena minai. Is it considered the same min? Is it considered the same type of, the Shach says it's called the same min. So min b'minai is bottled with roiv. Once you have roiv, kosher milk, it's kosher. The fact that the goy mixed in not kosher milk really, ikar hadin, should not be a cause for concern. Min ha-Torah it's mutter. With Rabbanan you need 60. But nonetheless, Chazal asur it. Chazal made a gzeira. With Rabbanan they were goyzer on it, and it's a gzeiras Chazal. So this is something we have to understand, that the milk, there's no chashash that the milk is really not kosher min ha-Torah. Min ha-Torah the milk is kosher. There's a gzeira d'Rabbanan that perhaps they mixed in some not kosher, and therefore Chazal asur to eat the milk that's made by a guy, but if for whatever reason times will change, and perhaps, and this could get into discussion later, we'll see, times will change and there is a real kashrus issue, that's not discussed over here. What we're discussing here is where there's no kashrus issue, where really we're not chayshish me'ikra adin, that it's asam d'oraisa, because even if they mixed in milk, it's bottled. But they made a gzeira d'Rabbanan, a new gzeira, not to eat this milk. So.
But if they mixed it in, that it's not bottled, they mixed too much. Like, we assume it's going to be bottled, or if it was more, you'd actually
D'oraisa
see
at least, you have
consistency.
roiv. With D'oraisa for sure you have roiv.
How do you think maybe they mixed in more than...
Roiv?
Right now.
There's no chashash that mixing more than roiv. Maybe more than shishim.
Yeah, that's
So it's a shay, yeah, more than shishim, which would be also only with Rabbanan. So there's a chashash Rabbanan. But some say there's no chashash Rabbanan either. It's all a new gzeira with Rabbanan that they mixed anything in. They don't want mixing anything in. And therefore, they asur the milk. Now, that's for the milk. Now, there are, the halach says like this, that so clause 1 is that this is all milk by a goy, milk on a non-Jewish farm. But if you're talking about the milk on a Jewish farm, here, the Ramah brings down later, spotting here, the goyish maidservants that are milking the cows in a Jewish house or in their beer shalham and their things. So as long as it's not a non-Jewish house in between, so we're not worried about anything. That's butter. So
that milk doesn't have to be supervised?
That milk doesn't have to be supervised.
But any Jewish house or a from house?
That's a good question. We're not going to get to that because most milk today comes from Jewish companies. It's considered Beis Yisrael, as hashgacha there. So, but that's a good question. Discusses over there what's with a non-religious or the chayshish for also mixing in. But so this only applies. Chalav Akam applies in a non-Jewish company. Non-Jewish company. You have to have a Jew there. Now, what does the Jew have to see? The Jew has to see the milking process. It says like this. If he's chaylev in his house and the Jew is standing on the outside, if you know that there's no, now the Jew knows, let's say, that's case number 1. Case number 1 is a non-Jewish farm, and so the Jew has to see the chaliva, gzeira midrabanan, chazal geyser, that they have to see the milking, otherwise it's not considered kosher milk midrabanan.
The milking of every animal every time, or they just like once a day?
No, every animal every time.
Every animal
You have to see it all the time. Now, if let's say you know that there's no non-kosher animal in the entire Eden, okay, like it is most of the times in our cow farms, there aren't any camels walking around. So there it says like this. The halach is like this. Afilu ein Yisrael yachal l'roisei b'shashu chaylev. So even if the Jew can't see at the time that he's milking it, as long as he's there. The Yisrael standing there outside the milking, so he doesn't have to actually watch the milking. Okay, so if you know there's no non-kosher animals in this area here, so the Jew doesn't actually have to. The part of the Gzeres Chazal was that they don't have to actually see the milking. It's enough if they see they're sitting outside.
So they don't have to be in the barn necessarily.
They don't have to be in there necessarily, but they have to be there.
Yeah.
Video cam no good.
It doesn't work. It still has to be there. So that's the. It still has to be there. You saw Yosh Bachutz. So even if you can't see him when he's standing, but it says he could see him when he's standing. See, that's the catch here. He could see him. Well, it means he could see him when he's standing. That if he goes in and out is enough. He has to be a Jew there, but he doesn't have to actually watch the entire process. But he has to be a Jew there that he could see. If he wants, he could see.
Could it be any Jew, or could it be any Jew could be there?
Any Jew.
It doesn't have to be a mashgiach necessarily.
Doesn't mashgiach.
Shabbos, no.
Oh.
What?
It's got to have more. It's got to keep Shabbos.
Yeah. No, it means is you have to be officially hired by the COR.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, you have to know that there's a Jew there, though. How do you know there's a Jew there? Yeah. But as long as there's a Jew there, that's good. Okay. That's the halacha. Now it says like this. Okay, we're not going to go into all the details of this. So the machlokes that the Olam relies on is based on Rav Moshe. I'm not going to go into this barichus, just give you the basic rundown here. That in a place where the memshala, where the government does not allow you to mix in other kinds of milk, and they check it out, and they can close you down if they do find you do other kinds of things. So then there are those that are matir. Now, what's the heta based on? The basic question over here is, what's this gezerah that you have to have a Jew watching it? Do you actually have to have the Jew seeing it, or is it that, or is it enough that there's a yediyah brura? We have a complete knowledge that there's no not kosher milk getting mixed in. In other words, this gezerah that Chazal made, is it based on, since there's a possibility that they're going to mix in a non-kosher milk, so they made a gezerah you actually have to see it? Or you have to stand outside that you could see it if there's no non-kosher animal there? Or there's this halacha that the fact that you could stand outside if there's no non-kosher animal in the Eder show us that the main objective is to know b'yediyah brura that there's no other milk being mixed in. And therefore, and this is based on certain achronim, that in other words, the Pri Chodesh was matir. The Pri Chodesh was matir if there's no not kosher animal in the whole city, or if the non-kosher milk is more expensive. If non-kosher animal milk is actually more expensive, which may be today, more expensive than the other milk. So the Pri Chodesh was matir because there's no chashash you'll mix in. If you take away the chashash you'll mix in, so then the milk is kosher. So you see that it's just a chashash, but if you get rid of the concern, then it's mutter. And based on that, there's those that are matir to drink what we call, we gave it a new name, it's called chalav stam. But that's what we call it, chalav stam. But that's where the heta comes from.
That's without supervision, yeah? Without
supervision, because we know there's no non-kosher milk in it. Others are machmer on that, some Sefer, some Tshuva Barichas, Chalkas Yaakov, others, that know that, first of all, they could mix in, even though there's a government on top of it, but there's a lot of things factories do that don't necessarily fit in with the rules of the government. And therefore, you can't necessarily rely on that. B, the gezerah is not enough. Once there was a chashash can be mixed in, so the gezerah's chazal is that you have to have a Jew seeing the chaliva, and you can't go about that. So that's the machlokes between the pro chalav stams or the anti chalav stams. That's the machlokes. But that's the halacha of milk. Okay, the halacha of milk is that since there was a chashash they could mix in, so they made a gzeira that there has to be a Jew there by the time of the chaliva. Now, interesting enough, we'll get to this later. It's an important thing to remember is that this gzeira is only milk that came into Jewish possession. So before the milk enters the Jewish hands, there's no isser on it. In other words, again, we're not really concerned that there's not kosher milk here, but we're chayshish that the guy is going to mix it in sort of before he gives it to us. So my nafkamina is this have. See in a moment. It's only when it reaches our hands where this gezer is chal, and you're not allowed to use the milk that you bought from a non-Jew if you didn't know or have someone watching it at the time of the milk. Now, this okay, so let's go to halacha beis now. Okay, we'll come back. So halacha beis discusses cheese. The cheese of a guy is asum. Chazal asks the cheese of a guy for a different reason. Now, why do we need a different reason? Why isn't that enough? The first reason we have, because we all know that milk, the only milk that could become cheese, is kosher animal milk. But milk from a not kosher animal cannot become cheese. So there was no gzeira on the cheese that it's from a not kosher animal. We didn't have that problem. So therefore, there's a different issur on the cheese. There's a different issur on the cheese. The issur on the cheese is there's a whole Gemara in Avodah Zarah with a bunch of different reasons why Chazal asked it. Halacha l'maaseh, the main reason is because the rennet, we discussed it the other week, they used to use or kavas nevela. They would use the stomach of a animal that was dead, that died. It didn't have a kosher shechita, and that would be maimed the cheese. That would make it congeal and make the cheese into cheese, and that's considered a nice and tam, more than a nice and tam. It's maimed it makes it, and therefore it's asur. So because of that gzeira, they made a gzeira that even, it says, "Vafilo habidu ba'asavim," even if they used grasses, in other words, a natural form of rennet, different than the stomach of the animal, still, Chazal asur the cheese of a guy finished. You can't use the cheese of a guy unless a Jew made the cheese. I will see about that soon, exactly what that means. But before we get into that, the question is like this. We said the first reason doesn't apply because they you can't make cheese from not kosher milk. So here again, this is only true, it's clear in the Ramah, this is only true if the cheese was made before it came to the Jew's hands. Right? But let's say you bought milk from a non-Jew, and then you made cheese out of it. So there we don't say, well, hey, you made cheese out of it, so it must be it was kosher milk, and therefore the milk is good. We don't say that. We say that the milk at the time you got it was not kosher, because we were chayshish that maybe the guy mixed in some not kosher milk. Now that you made a cheese, okay, since most of it was kosher milk, so the cheese was made with the kosher milk, and the not kosher milk sort of got got stuck in the grooves and in the place where it's just mixed in there, but it didn't become really cheese. But maybe perhaps there still is not kosher milk in there. So therefore, the only heter is only if it came to my hands when it was already cheese. So then I could say that the guy, since it's not asur, we said, the chalav akum is not asur until it comes to the Jew's hands. So it wasn't asur yet. It wasn't asur yet. We're not chayshish that he mixed in the milk until he's selling it to you. He wants to make money, so he's going to mix in the non-kosher animal milk before he sells it to you. But until that point, we assume that it's all kosher milk, and therefore, if he makes cheese out of it, then there's no issue. And there's another reason, because since if he knows he's going to make cheese out of this milk, if he knows up front, when he milks the cow that he's going to make cheese out of the milk, then he's not going to mix in not kosher animal because it's not helpful for the cheese. So there's two reasons. First of all, it wasn't asur yet until it came to my hands. It wasn't asur, and therefore, if it's made cheese by his hands, there's no isser as far as the mixing in the chalav. There's a different problem. the rennet. So you have a mashgiach go there to put in the rennet. But as far as the milking of the cows, he doesn't have to worry about it. So if there's a cheese factory, you don't have to have Chol of Yisrael, that the Jew has to see the milking of the cow, because there's no issue of Chol of Yisrael on cheese. There's a different issue on cheese. It has to be Gvinas Yisrael, that he has to make the cheese. But as far as the Chol of Yisrael, that part is not relevant. If it was made cheese before it came to your hands. If you got the milk, and now the question is, you want to use this milk to make cheese, it's too late. It's too late. Unless, the poskim say, unless this milk was specifically, you have a cheese company, and the milk was specifically sent to make cheese with, so then there's a big swar to say again, we're not choishish. We're not choishish. She knows, the guy knows, everybody knows that this milk is designated for cheese. So if this milk is designated for cheese, there's no chashash will mix in the not kosher milk. So even if it was milk at the time it came to the Jewish hands, there's still as far as that it's mutter. Okay, so that's the milk and cheese. Okay, the milk has one issue, the cheese has another issue, but they're not connected.
So what does it mean when it says Chol Yisrael cheese on the package?
It's a good question. I'm not sure what it means. Not sure what it means. In other words, that the
You pay more. What do you think of?
yeah, they have not Chol Yisrael cheese. They have not the mill cheese. It's not Chol Yisrael cheese. Every cheese that's kosher, any cheese that has there's a heter of chol of stam we discussed, right? The poskim that are matter it, but there's no heter of cheese stam. Cheese has to be, any cheese that's going to have a certifiable hechsher that works has to be kosher. Now, there are still two ways to make kosher cheese, which is a big debate among the poskim. You should be aware of that. One way is, so it says like this. So the Chazal made a gzeira that the Jew has to put in has to make the cheese. It can't be made by a non-Jew because of the kavas nevela. Even if we know that today nobody uses kavas nevela, that's not how they make cheese today. But nonetheless, they asked it. There's a gzeiras Chazal, and nobody argues on that. In other words, by the milk, perhaps we have rayas that it's only a question of that we're really choshish, they're going to mix in the non-kosher animal milk. So perhaps today where there's no chashash, it's mutter. But the cheese, that's not the case. The cheese, everybody agrees that there was a gzeira on the cheese, and unless the Jew made the cheese, it's awesome.
When you say the Jew made the cheese,
what does that mean?
You mean that he owns the company?
Well, wait, we're going to see. We're going to see what that means. So what does it mean? So, although there is a clause in the Ramah that says, if it's a certain places they were noig heter to eat cheese, that Kol B'nai Medina, every person in the country, they all made the cheese without animal rennet, so they were matter it. So those places that they had a minhag heter, they were allowed to eat the cheese. But any other place that didn't have this minhag, even if we know that they don't mix in this kind of rennet, it's still awesome. That's how we pass it today, because we don't have those places. Now,
how much rennet would they use for the cheese? Is there a measured amount? Generally,
how should they mix in?
Is there a measured amount that has to go into to make the cheese of the rennet?
To make it usher?
What? No, to
make it. I'm sure there's an amount. I don't know. I'm sure there is an amount. Yeah, but even a small amount can make it usher because you see the effect in the cheese.
Yeah, there's no rennet.
Oh.
They use something else. Therefore, kosher cheese doesn't. They use that.
Non-kosher cheese uses rennet?
No, if you have a guy who sells cheese, and you know they don't use the rennet,
still
which is
awesome.
It's still because
that's the gzeira. That's the gzeira.
Yeah,
that's the gzeira.
Because we think maybe they did use the rennet. You can't trust them.
Not because we think, not because I think that maybe they did. Okay. It's just that Chazal made a blanket issa.
Made a blanket.
Yeah.
What is rennet again exactly? What is it?
It's the enzymes that turn the milk into cheese. So it used to be used,
or it can come from a kosher or a non-kosher animal.
Yeah, or it could come in from natural without the animals. But The derech was to use the stomach has the enzymes in it, and that's what they used.
Kosher animal, there.
Or kosher or not kosher. A kosher animal, but it died. They didn't do shchita on it,
Is there any question that the rennet is bossa?
Yeah, there was another question of basa b'cholov. That's discussed in some Peizayin, basa b'cholov, but that's a different discussion. It's hard already, and it's not nice and time. It's discussed in the Shulchan Aruch here. Now, so what needs to be done over here? So it says like this. Ramah says, if the Jew sees them making the cheese, that's enough. That's what Ramah says. Now he says like this.
Kosher cheese companies don't use rennet. Cheese, right? They use something else. They don't use rennet. No, you can use. They use something else. What do kosher cheese companies use instead of rennet?
You use kosher.
Kosher rennet.
No, the rabbi said you can. There is such a thing as rennet. It doesn't come artificially.
Yeah, but it
That's
doesn't come on
awesome.
this. It doesn't come on this.
You look at the kosher cheese, it often says among the ingredients kosher rennet.
Using kosher rennet.
So this that I said before that if this Cholav Yisrael, you don't need Cholav Yisrael for cheese. So there's actually Machlokes Rashi Tosfos in this. That Rashi holds that that if you're making it out of non-Jewish milk, that it's not lechatchila. There's a chashash, but Tosfos holds that it's mutter, and Ramah says like this. The Ramah says that if the Jew sees you making the cheese and the chaliva, it's mutter. But if he sees making the cheese and he didn't see the chaliva, yesh lahata b'di'evid, because he's soymach on Tosfos. So that's only. But again, this is all if you bought the milk from the non-Jew before you made it into cheese. If you bought the milk from the non-Jew before you made it into cheese, so the question is, did he mix in the non-kosher milk when you bought it from him? Or do you say, since he knows you're making cheese out of it, so he's not, there's no chashash that'll mix it in. But if you get the cheese from him, then that's not a, that wouldn't be included in this machlokes.
Halacha Maisa, today nobody makes their own cheese. So it's basically you only can buy cheese with the hechsher.
Today?
Yeah.
Yep, we can have non-Jewish companies making cheese that have a hechsher.
You can't have.
You have non-Jewish companies
Yeah.
making cheese that have a hechsher. But so the hechsher has to be that they see the, and the hechsher is going to be that they see the cheese being made.
Is the milk has to come from kosher?
In Canada, it's not a problem.
I know, but that's because it always rennet.
Here, he brings it over here.
Do we differentiate between cheese and cottage cheese?
So he says on the bottom here, it seems to be a little complicated over here. He says that it depends how they buy the milk. How do cheese companies buy the milk? Do they buy it based on the volume? So then maybe there's a chashash to mix in some non-kosher milk, or do they buy it? They're only paying. You're only paying for the amount of cheese that comes out at the end. It says today you buy it based on the volume. So I guess that's the question here. That's the question here. How you means poskim about it. You have to see how you do. Are we choishish? I guess that will be the machlokes between the milk cheese and the migdal cheese. If you're choishish for Cholav Yisrael on the cheese that's made today by a Jewish company, if they buy the milk from a non-Jewish company, is there any chashash in the milk having? Is there a chashash of cholav? cholav akum. Again, if you hold, like Moshe and the others, that cholav stam is mutter, then you don't have the issue anyways. But if you want to be makbid on cholav Yisrael, so the question is, if you're buying cheese, is there such a chashash? In other words, like we mentioned before, that the cheese mitzad atzmai, and even butter also, it's only made from kosher milk. Can't be made from non-kosher animals. So beside, there's no chashash of cholav akum in that. The only question is, when you bought the milk, at the time you bought the milk, it was still milk form. So does that have the yisr of cholav akum or not? That's the question. That's the question. The poskim here, how far they made it, even though they know you're going to use it to make butter and other things, does that get into the this? Okay, but the cheese itself, making the cheese, what's the issue with making the cheese? So the Ramah says it's enough if the Jew sees the making of the cheese, which the making of cheese is the putting the rennet in the cheese, in the milk. That's called the making the cheese. If the Jew sees that, that's enough to be materit. The Shach is choyluk. The Shach holds that even b'di'evet it's not mutter with that. It's not enough. Where's over here? The Shach holds that that you have to, the Jew himself has to put it in. That's not enough. He has to put it in himself. The Yisrael himself has to do the Maisa Hamada. So the Jewish Mashgiach has to be the one to put in the rennet, according to the Shach, to make it mutter.
And the mashgiach has to stay there all the way until the cheese is formed, or just
it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like once you did the Maisa putting it in, then that's enough. Once you put it in, then that's enough.
Is there a difference between regular, like cheeses and cottage cheese? Does cottage cheese?
Yeah, he says lahedju. The guy can do the rest of the action of making the cheese. He just has to do that part.
Does cottage cheese go
different
Cottage cheese is an excellent question. What that goes under? What cottage cheese goes under? Because cottage cheese doesn't need this whole
I don't
process.
think there's rennet in it.
No, there's no rennet in it. That's right.
It's more like yogurt or something.
Yeah. Cottage cheese is a shower. Moshe says, what's a shower? How to do cottage cheese? So the question is if it has the problem of cholav Yisrael, the first problem might have. First problem might have cholav Yisrael, or perhaps even a non-kosher milk doesn't become cottage cheese. I don't know. Does cottage cheese come from non-kosher milk? If you make, probably you can't. So that's a question of cottage cheese. There were those that were makel on all cheeses and butters and things, not to be concerned with cholav Yisrael for these reasons, but this is the deal. So cheese, kosher cheese, not all cheese are the same. As this comes out, they're not all created equal. Some are made with a guy that's usher. Some have a Jewish watching it. So according to the Ramah, that's mutter. And some cheeses they actually have the Jewish mashgiach put it in, and that's according to the shach, that's mutter. Just the Jew watching it according to the shach would not be enough. That would actually be usher. So there's a big machlokes l'maisa, halacha l'maisa. What comes out halacha l'maisa?
So, like, what do the big Kosher organizations do?
Do we know that? What the
So
standards
again,
of the-
this is all relevant in the in a non-Jewish company. In the Jewish company, you don't have the issue. You don't have the issue.
But like
Jewish company, you don't have the issue.
in a Jewish company where a non-Jewish employee puts the
Yes, I
rennet,
think that's also okay. In a Jewish company, that's there's no chashash.
5% owned by Jews.
because that would be like the case of you watching it but not doing it directly.
Not doing it directly, yeah.
Kosher cheese, they don't use rennet. It's
cheaper than those deficient.
What to get a kosher is from a kosher and it's chef that
It doesn't.
It's an enzyme.
But to get the
It's an
enzyme
enzyme.
from a
It's
kosher.
an enzyme.
It's easier to make the enzyme.
Right.
It's easy, so it's easy to make it.
They don't, kosher cheeses don't use
They
rennet.
don't use real rennet. I have no
That's
idea.
what I thought.
They don't use
It says on the packet kosher rennet. Some of the cheeses.
Ah,
It says
oh,
kosher
for
rennet.
kosher cheeses?
Yeah.
Because it's artificially made enzymes. That's why it's kosher rennet.
You gotta call it something.
Yeah, you gotta call it something.
Now, there's a shaila here like this. So Moshe has a shaila in the tshuva. Okay, in Chel Gimel Yehudeya. The shaila here.
Vegans won't eat milk anyway.
Okay, so there's a shaila here about the whey. Okay? So how do they make whey? So, okay, after how they make it today, you can check it out. Well, the way they made it back then was that they cooked the cheese. And when they cook the cheese, you know, as you process the milk turns to cheese, so you always make a separation, right? You separate the water from the more thicker part. And that's called mecholov. We'll get into that. What mecholov is. And then they take the cheese and they process it again. And they make the cheese, and you get water coming out of that. And and that's what you get whey from. So sometimes he says they do it from the hard cheese, sometimes they do it from the softer cheeses, and then they take all these waters and they mix these waters together and they dry it out, and then it becomes a dust. When you dry out the water, it becomes a dust, a little white dust, and that's whey. So if they put into different cookies, they put into different candies and ice creams and all kinds of stuff like that. They put the whey in. So the question is, what's the halacha of this whey? What is this?
So when there's like a chocolate bar with dairy on it, is that whey and not milk? Is that what we're saying? Or is that something else?
Well, sometimes it may be whey, yeah. Sometimes it may be whey. So the question is, what is the status of this whey? Now, as far as whether that's milchiks or not, okay, is that milk at all? So this is the discussion we had last time. So the Shulchan Aruch over here, it says like this.
W-H-E-Y.
I think beer actually. Beer's part of it.
That's what.
The water product from the milk was left over. Yeah, so they took that.
That's what little Miss Muffet was eating.
Little Miss Muffet.
Beer.
Oh, right.
I'm sure it's
Yeah, it's
We used to probably have that.
So it says like this. This halacha in Basar B'Cholov says, Yesh Misha Omer, the Nesiyuve de Chalva, Pirish Chalva Mismatzetzes Mikfoin Hagavina. When you cheese up the cheese, and now you get water that comes out of that, Einon B'chlal Mecholav, it's not included in Mecholav, V'asim Min HaTorah. Oh, so this is the first time you're making the cheese. The water that comes out when you're making cheese, that's really milk. After you make the cheese, if you mevashel the water that came out, you take the water that came out, okay, when you make cheese, so you separate the cheese from the water, now you take that water and you separate it again, and then you get water and some cheese, sort of whatever's left. So that water from the second separation, that's not milchiks. That's already, and that's not considered milchiks. That's powerful milk. That's not considered milchiks. That's the halacha. Now, we mentioned last time there was a sheet in the Rishonim that holds that that's actually Eva Menachai. That's Aser, because we said that milk really should be Aser, else Yotzeh from Eva Menachai should be Aser. Because the Torah is matter it, because the Torah says, Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash, you're allowed to eat milk. So the Torah is matter it, but Torah is only matter to milk. But once it's not milk anymore, once you separate it and take out all the milk parts of the milk, and what's left is that water, that's actually Aser, it's Eva Menachai. So there's a sheet in Shulchan Aruch that holds that way. But the other sheet that holds that, no, it's kosher, but it's not milk. It may not be considered milk, as Basar B'Cholov, that if you cook that with your meat, that's kosher. Okay? But, so the question is, this whey that they make, they make it from they take actually the cheese part, and they cook it up again, and there's water that comes out, and then they dry that up and they make whey. So what would the issues be from this whey? So we could have two issues now. We discussed there's two issues, right? There's one issue that you could have from Cholav Yisrael. Maybe it's not Cholav Yisrael, no problem. They could have problem two, that maybe it's not cheese, kosher cheese. They make the whey, they don't make it from a kosher cheese factory, they take it from wherever they make it from. So the question is, could you use that whey? Is that whey considered kosher or not? This was a very big shaila. Not kosher. So Reb Moshe says like this. Reb Moshe says that, okay, we have the heter number one, is that once cheese was made out of it, once you made cheese, especially in a non-Jewish factory, it never came to the Yid. So again, if the milk came to the Yid and he made cheese out of it, and you have a question, maybe you have a problem with Cholav Yisrael. But if it was made cheese by the guy, there was never an issue of Cholav Yisrael to begin with. So the Cholav Yisrael problem doesn't exist, because once he made cheese out of it, so then we know it was a kosher animal that made cheese, and now that you made it back to milk, so to say, by pulling out the water of it and made that back to milk, so that won't be a problem of Cholav Yisrael. It's a little more complicated, but Seder. So he says, now as far as the cheese goes, he doesn't seem to be too worried about the cheese. As far as the cheese goes, it's, I guess, not cheese. It's chalav. But he says you should have a problem like this. Okay, you should have a problem like this. When they cook it up and the water comes out, so the cheese is also, you're not allowed to eat the cheese. The water coming out should be water, because that's not cheese, that's milk. But the question is, when you cook it, you have blias going from the cheese. Like every time you cook kosher and not kosher together, so you have tam going from the cheese into the milk. So now when they cook up this thing to get out to get the whey out, they cook it up and they get the juice out. So that should be a svara, that it should be asur, because one thing should asur the other thing. That's what he asks. So he brings up, he says it's a good question, he doesn't know the answer to it, but he brings a Pri Chadash. And the Pri Chadash seems to ask the same question on the other way around, on the getting the mei cholav out of the whey, out of the milk part. When you make cheese, so you have the water part goes to one side, the cheese goes to the other. Okay, then you take that cheese and you take that water and you cook it up. And then you make, and the more cheese comes out, and what's left is what we call mei cholav, that's not even milchiks. Okay? So he asks, the Pri Chadash says, that he says that that's mutter. That's the question here. I'll just find it here. So if you cook up the milk and you take out you take out the cheese part of it, and the milk part is mutter. But l'chayra, he says, it's the first halacha here. They cook up the milk. I guess our milk is already pasteurized, but if you cook the old milk, so you'll get some cheese floating on the top. You'll get some hard stuff going on the top, and that's also cheese. So that he's matir. He's matir. That cheese part is mutter because that you can't have mixed into it any You can't have mixed into that chalav tameh because chalav tameh doesn't become cheesy. So that part is mutter. But the question is, the milk part is aser. So why doesn't the milk part aser that? When you cook it together, it should aser the cheese. You're cooking the milk, and the milk cheese is some parts cheese, and you take that off, he says that you're allowed to eat. That is no problem of chalav vakum. The guy cooks it, that you can eat, there's no problem of chalav vakum, because that became cheese. But the question is, you're cooking it together. So the blias from the milk, which is also chalav vakum, maybe there's not kosher milk in there, should aser the cheese. So in any case, he brings a raya from there that's not such a concern. You see that you must say when Chazal asered the milk and the cheese they mattered, so they were mattered even, you don't have to be chashish for the blias. The whole chashash is a drabanan that maybe they mixed in some not kosher milk. So they made their issur in such a way, whatever parts turn cheese is mutter, whatever parts remain milk is aser, and we don't mix the two even if they're cooked together. So he says for some reason you have to say that will apply also as far as the way goes, and that will be mutter. So he brings down the shaila here also. Here. Avkas cholav. At the end of the day, there's a big machlokes. There's machlokes between all the poskim, Chazon Ish, Rabbi Yonasan Shteif, that say that that there's an issue of cholav akum on the way, but the Har Tzvi is materit. Har Tzvi is he's mater. He holds that since it's made into powder form before it gets into your hands. So again, he says cholav akum is only aser if it comes to you in the form of cholav, but if it gets to you in the form of cheese, they never aser it. So he says if it was nishtana in any way, by the time you get to it, it's already in a form of powder. So he says then they never aser it. It was never aser yet. If you got it as milk form, it was aser, and then you made the powder, and it will be aser. But if you got it as powder form, right? So he says so it was never aser, and it's not cholav anymore. First it was made to cheese, now it was made to powder. So he says it's not considered iser, and he's matter it. The Har Tzvi was matter the weight, but the other shittas here held that the other shittas here, Chazon Ish and others. Held that it has a din of cholav akum. But it seems that Rav Moshe is matir. It seems like Rav Moshe is matir it even without his svara. It seems like he's matir it because it became cheese before, and then when you take it out, it became. Seems like Rav Moshe is matir it at the end of the day, even without his svar that cholav stam is mutter. If your whole cholav stam is mutter, you don't have the problem to begin with. Because if your whole cholav stam is aser, he seems to hold that this is anyways mutter. Because since it was made to gvina, it was made to cheese, and cheese has no chashash in it. And now when they take out the milk, you're not going to aser it later either. That's what he seems to.
Doesn't that make perfect sense? Why would you say anything different?
Because once it's cheese, it should be mutter.
Yeah, right.
Once it's cheese, there shouldn't be any problem with it.
Cheese is the proof. Proof is in the book.
The shaila is like this. The shaila is, I don't know why, they asked what it's cholav and akum. He says it's not cholav anymore, it was cheese. And once it's cheese, even when they turn back into cholav, it still doesn't have the issur of cholav akum. And the shaila, why doesn't it have the issur of cheese? It was cheese, and now you got the water out of cheese. It should be also else cheese. He says, since really there's no chashash today, that it was made out of a non-kosher animal. It's only a gzeira The Chazal say the cheese has to be made out of a yid. So he says, this is his words here. He says, "Machshos manenu," the rennet they use is kosher anyways. That's not the issue in the rennet. So the whole shaila is a gzeira. So that's a light plug, but the light plug doesn't apply. The light plug doesn't apply. It doesn't apply over here. When by the time you're getting it out, it's already it's not the cheese.
If you're making cheese.
This
you've
is
got
not cheese. So the blia that what?
If you're making cheese, okay, you've got the cheese.
Yeah.
What's left is,
Water.
not water, but it's milky colored water.
Yeah.
And they sell it to someone who will distill it down to, get the powder.
Yeah.
But to them, it's garbage.
So that might be garbage. To us, it's milk.
It's not milk anymore.
It's
not-
considered milk. It's considered milk unless you cook it out again a second time. You say.
No, I'm just at a cheese factory.
Yeah. I understand.
They've got no use. They've got no use.
Look, I know how the question is how we consider it, right? So we consider that milk, but the question is when now they take the cheese and they cook it again, and they get out the water from it
They don't cook the cheese again.
to get the whey out, to get the whey.
No, you take the curds and you
Yeah.
compress them.
You compress it, yeah.
Compress them and you squeeze whatever is there. The rest of it is non-usable and
So they do it without heat, you're saying? So they do it with heat or without heat?
I've seen it done, without heat.
Yeah, so if it's done without heat, you won't have the problem of blias. If it's done with heat, then you would have a problem. Now, what's interesting is here he brings, he brings, I don't know, maybe you can help me with this one. He says that today you could make cheese with a non-kosher animal. He says they make it with colostrum. You know what colostrum is? Cholov leda? Colostrum? I'm not sure what this is. He says
I know
milk.
that in the Middle East they've been making camel cheese for centuries.
How does it look like? Cheese? Real cheese?
I don't know, I've never,
But it could be cheese made from milk from an animal which we don't have Masora on. Like it could be one of these cows they have in India or I
That's a
don't
good question also. Maybe it's cheese from a cow that we don't have a syrup on. What's halacha with that? It's a good question.
good question.
But he brings down here that it seems that they take, he calls it cholov leda, cholov from the birth. I don't know what this is, colostrum. If anyone can figure out what that is. Google it to find out. Colostrum.
Did it say
And,
that again, from a bird?
He says that
It's
that
a cuff, not a cuff.
is made, could be made at colostrum. He says that could be made from a non-kosher milk. And therefore he says there is whey being made from non-kosher milk actually. And then you have a real problem. Because again, all our discussion is only with the assumption that there's not a kashrus problem. It's only a problem from the gzeira. But once you run into a kashrus problem,
Yeah, form of milk produced by the mammary glands of mammals during pregnancy.
Also, they're discharging milk before
what
they
is
give
that?
birth.
What is that? What happened?
It's milk produced by the mammary glands of mammals, including humans, during pregnancy.
There you go. I don't know what it is, but they make it.
It's
So-
breast milk, basically.
Yeah, and it seems that they make whey from that milk.
Something like when
It was common to make whey from that milk. So he actually brings down at the end here from Bill Feinstein.
Yeah,
the first stuff that comes out.
I heard that from pediatricians.
That's why they said breastfeeding is great.
There's something special
Cut
about it.
antibiotics
Protects
and
the
stuff.
babies.
That's what I heard. How are you getting such good research? I get those.
So at the end of the day, it's a question. The way is a question. You have to ask the kashrus organizations how they make it, what they use today. But you have to know the mitzvahs how they make it. But if there's a question of any non-kosher animal, there's no question it's us. And the only question is if you know the mitzvah says that they use kosher animals, and the whole question is b'negeya whether it has a halacha of cholav akum or it has a halacha of gvina shalakum. So it seems that Moshe was noitel hater But the other poskim are not lahachmir. It could be it has a din of chol vakum, chazlish and some steif and others. That seems to have to be a question. That seems to be a question.